This is a general reading for entertainment purposes only. Watching my content does not constitute an advisory relationship such as therapy or legal counsel. I am not a certified medical or therapeutic professional, and my readings do not constitute professional advice. My readings are for confirmation of what you already intuitively know for yourself, not to get answers from me. General readings like this are like forecasting the weather for the entire planet. I can say that it is summer in the northern hemisphere, but summer looks very different from region to region. So please use your best judgment, take what resonates and leave the rest. And now let's get back to the video. Thank you. Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Bee and I'm the Moon Lodge Mystic. I'm really excited for this video. I'm going to be doing dream interpretation. And I've thought a lot about how I want to do this, and I'm still kind of making it up as I go along, but I did want to bring out these dream cards that I have. I picked these up. I actually found these at a thrift store. They're a set of 20 cards that depict dream actions and dream archetypes, and usually I don't really recommend dream work products or like dream books and whatever, like dream interpretation encyclopedias or whatever, because often it's just people making shit up, just kind of just there's not really a lot of what do you say, it's just kind of like pulled from everywhere. And dream structure, dreams have structure to them. They don't, the symbols and things that, like the actual subjects that appear in the dreams, the specific type of animals and stuff like that, don't necessarily carry universal interpretable meanings. Often the meaning is skewed towards the personal experience of that person. And so, you know, you might go looking up, I mean, this might work for you, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Like maybe a pig shows up in your dream and you Googled pig spirit totem or whatever. If you weren't socialized in the tradition of, you know, cultural myth and stuff like that, that is related to like pig spirit guide, Native American or whatever, this is what tends to come up online. It might not, it just, there's just a less likelihood of it being that relevant to you. Often it's a lot more productive to actually sit and free associate, like, what do I associate with pigs? Or whatever it is that pops up in your dream. However, these 20 cards, they do depict some archetypal motifs that appear universally among dreams. And this is drawn from the Jungian psychological tradition. That's where we get our concept really of these type of dream archetypes and stuff like that, is that Carl Jung really did a lot of the foundational work on that. And I mean, he drew from a lot of different traditions and world cultures as well, but the way that we experience it in this distilled form is from Carl Jung. And so I pulled 3 cards. I'm going to be doing 3 piles today for different dream interpretations. The idea is that you'll pick a pile based on the card, and hopefully it corresponds to a dream that you've had recently. So a shadow dream, that often is marked by a lot of anxiety. It can be like a nightmare. Usually there is a character that is the same sex as you who is playing a part. You might have an antagonistic relationship with this person. You might perceive them in your dream as antagonizing you or chasing you or attacking you, or depending on your level of differentiation and how much inner work you've been doing and shadow work, you might have a more positive relationship to this figure in your dreams. But usually there is some type of anxiety or some type of light and dark aspect, like usually the dream ego, which is yourself in your dream, is taking on like the lighter quality, while the shadow is represented by like darker colors, or someone with black hair, or even dark skin and things like that. So it's this archetypal representation of light and shadow. And where does that come from? Well, the concept of the Jungian shadow is really based upon this idea that every light casts a shadow. And you look at the light of consciousness, at the center of this usually is like our waking consciousness, our ego perspective. And so the ego tends to associate itself, funnily enough, with the lightness and the goodness and everything, and becomes very strongly identified with certain traits and constructs and concepts that reinforce its the way the ego views itself. So the way that you conceptualize the type of person that you are. Everything that runs contrary to that self-image is pushed aside into the shadow, and becomes the shadow. So this is the shadow that is cast by the ego, that the ego really doesn't like to look at. So if you really pride yourself on being a very kind and considerate and upstanding person and citizen and whatever, you might become very, very resistant to entertaining the possibility that sometimes you're not that way. Sometimes you're actually a jerk. Sometimes you have the capacity to be cruel to others, even violent, and things like that. And the thing to keep in mind is that we all have these potentialities within us. We all have within us the capacity to embody many different kinds of traits. And we make a conscious choice to embody one or the other. But you can develop a complex when you become incredibly in denial of the fact that you hold this capacity. And sometimes within the shadow, we have what's called the gold within the shadow. And this is like the diamond in the rough. Sometimes there are gifts that we keep hidden in the shadow. A really great example is, and one that most people relate to, is that often we're socialized to not really express our anger. And anger can kind of become, we usually have this drilled into us when we're children. And so that instinct, because the instinct to become angry and potentially violent is a natural instinct. It's a psychological instinct. And when we're told to deny that, we push it down, but it becomes kind of stuck developmentally in this state of being undifferentiated, because it was never given a chance to become consciously exercised. And you do a lot of things when you're growing up and you're developing, testing boundaries and things like that, and you learn to wield your instincts in certain ways. Like you learn when you are being too nice to someone, or what behavior is okay and what isn't okay, and you do that by acting out and then receiving correction from your environment. So you might respond in such a way that you find annoys somebody, and they tell you like, hey, I didn't really like that, that was annoying. And so you're like, oh, okay, so in this you're learning, you're like, oh, okay, then next time I won't be that way. When you're but these instincts that are in the shadow don't get a chance to do that. So when they come out, they're like primitive, and they can wreak havoc in your life because you haven't practiced using them in a conscious way. Where was I going with that? Well, I'm basically discussing the importance and the purpose of shadow work really is to integrate shadow contents into the consciousness. So that's a little bit about the shadow archetype. You might be drawn to this card if you had a dream recently that provoked a lot of anxiety in you, or there was this duality of lightness and darkness, or you felt persecuted. That's a really common one, I think. Because the shadow doesn't enjoy the fact that it's being repressed and that it's not allowed conscious existence. It's not allowed a seat in your world, basically. And Oh, I was talking about the gold in the shadow. Uh, it kind of shows you how scatterbrained I can get. But um, say you're repressing anger, your anger instinct. Well, there's a gift there. Like you might have this association with anger that it causes trouble, that it makes you a bad person, or whatever. And then you find that as you kind of try and consciously relate to your anger, and allow it a place in your life, that you find that there's actually some really important positive aspects to being allowed to express your anger, that it's a way of protecting yourself. And you have to access a little bit of aggression to be able to stand up for yourself when people are taking advantage of you or committing violence against you. You don't want to be someone who just lays down and allows yourself to be beaten to death if somebody were to try and assault you in that way. You need to draw upon that aggressive instinct, that anger instinct, to actually feel like, hey, this is not fair, and fight back and actually protect yourself. So that was my example of the gold and the shadow. But this often relates to many different kinds of gifts, a gift for creativity, for sensitivity, and all sorts of things. So I'm interested in what will come out in the shadow pile. And you might be drawn to this card if you had a kind of antagonistic dream or that duality aspect present. The next card we have is a dream action. So this is like, it's not necessarily an archetypal singular figure that's going on. This is an action that's occurring in a dream. So if you had a dream recently where you found yourself ascending or descending, that's going to be relevant to this pile. These are interesting actions, and they kind of have their own different archetypal meanings. So ascending in dreams often is kind of it can go one of two ways. It can be about ascending to higher levels of consciousness, like the heavenly levels, and actually achieving great spiritual insight in your life, and even transpersonal experiences for the ego. Ascending can also be a kind of clue about the ego becoming inflated. So this is when the ego starts to become identified with power that really is not within its scope of ability, is a very technical way of putting it. And when the ego is inflated, it kind of gets this false sense of invulnerability and begins taking on greater risk than what is advisable. And usually someone might be dreaming about flying in an airplane or flying through the air. A really classic myth that depicts this ascension as inflation aspect is the flight of Icarus and his father, and they created these sets of wings out of wax, and they had to fly at a certain level, but Icarus became inflated. He began to not really consider the risks of flying too close to the sun, and he thought, you know what, screw the caution. He threw caution to the wind and flew higher and higher and higher, and as a result he got closer to the sun, and the sun beat down heat on his wings, which melted the wax, and he fell and died. And so that's kind of a lesson about inflation. The descending aspect, this is usually about, again, the descent can be the descent of Icarus to his death because he didn't follow any forewarning. And so what comes up must come down. And sometimes if the ego has been really resistant to coming back down, it's a very brutal, like, pop, you're flying and you hit rock bottom type of deal. But descent can also relate to going to lower levels of consciousness. And usually this is like going into the underworld or the belly of the whale or something like that. And really this can be, again, shadow work. This is going into the unconscious waters and learning something about yourself that was previously not conscious to the ego. So if you had a dream where you were like going up a flight of stairs or going down into the earth or something like that. I even had a dream recently where I literally was walking up and down a bunch of stairs going down into the underworld itself. So that's the kind of dream that is going to come up in this pile. The final card we have is another dream archetype, and it's the wise old man or woman. This one's pretty straightforward. This is if you've had a dream recently where you encountered an older woman or an older man. They might, depending on the ego's relationship to these archetypes, it could have been an antagonistic dream. It could have been a really positive dream. So it really depends on your personal relationship to these archetypes and the kind of work that you've been doing. So yeah, basically, if you had a big dream that really revolved around an older figure, an older woman or an older man, they might have been giving you advice. They might have been admonishing you or criticizing you. Again, this is where it comes down to your personal, where you're at in your personal journey, basically. Sorry, I just noticed how discolored my nails have gotten recently. Must have been from all the cooking I was doing. Anyways, so those are the 3 piles. I hope that my explanation of the different cards was helpful for kind of getting clued into what type of dreams you want to be bringing into these piles. If you don't have a specific dream in mind, you might still be getting something out of the piles. You might choose just based on what you're drawn to. You might choose based on numbers. So this card is number 7, this is number 1, and this is number 10. So I thought it was interesting that those all came out. Another thing that was interesting was that while I was taking a shower earlier, I was thinking about what cards I was going to pull. And these 2 cards kept entering my mind like, oh yeah, I should do those. Those feel like important things that want to be talked about. And when I actually pulled the cards, these cards, there's only 20 of them and they're really huge. So they're not, I can't like riffle shuffle them the way I do with my decks. And so what I did was that I shuffled them so that they were in a kind of different order. And then I used a 20-sided dice, a digital die. I have an app for that. And I just rolled them and chose the numbers. The number that came up, I chose the card that was in that position in the deck, and these cards still ended up coming out. So I thought that was really cool because that was a truly randomized way of choosing them. And yeah, I thought I would share that because I thought it was interesting. So the way this reading is going to look, so I went into the piles. I'm going to draw tarot cards that for me is going to help kind of set the stage, show me hopefully the dream or the message that wants to come out. I'm going to draw an oracle card to kind of get some more context around maybe what part of the psyche is being concerned with this dream. I also have a couple books with me. This is an encyclopedia of symbols. I was thinking it might be cool to flip to a random page and just choose a symbol that might be meaningful to you. It might be a symbol that appeared in your dream. So I'm still kind of thinking about how I want to do that. I might flip coins. I don't know what I'm going to do. Really. Do I go to the back and I just see where my finger lands, or do I just flip a random page? I think I'll just flip a random page. I also have my Encyclopedia of Mythology. This has many myths from around the world inside. And I think for this I'll flip to a random page too and see like what myth shows up, because often myths, mythological stories contain archetypal human experiences that often appear in our dreams. So that'll be really interesting to try these out and see what comes up. So that's what the readings are going to look like. That's the information on the different cards that you need. And Okay, with that being said, I'm going to guide you through a little grounding meditation, and this will help ground you into this reading and really help you choose a pile that contains the message that you need to hear. It's okay if you feel drawn to multiple piles. These archetypes are very common among dreams, so you might have had multiple dreams that hit on all of these topics, but try and choose a dream that really like you can't get it out of your mind. It was really meaningful to you, even if you can't articulate why. It just really struck you, or it felt really intense when you were having it, because that probably has the most significant message that you need to get out, or become acquainted with. So for this meditation, I'm playing some gentle music, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes softly. We're going to be taking some deep breaths where we're going to extend the exhale. We're going to inhale to the count of 4 and then exhale to the count of 5. And then on the second one, we're going to inhale to the count of 5 and exhale to the count of 6. And we're going to do that a few times. This is going to help you relax. So getting started, let's close our eyes and count. Inhale in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now allow your breathing to return to normal, and visualize beautiful, strong roots growing out from the soles of your feet and traveling deep into the earth. Feel the warmth and wetness of the soil beneath your feet, holding your roots and pulling down on you, bringing you down into the earth. Sense some energy coming from your roots up through the soles of your feet, up through your legs and thighs, over your hips and belly, through your heart center and out your arms and hands, up through your neck and through your head. And then just feel that energy bloom through the crown of your head into a little flower or a lotus. And feel that earth energy exhale out through the flower, forming a little shield or egg that is here to protect you and nourish you so that you are grounded and secure through this reading. And just allow yourself to feel comforted by the earth. Bring your attention back to your roots again. See if you can reach them even deeper into the earth and extend them outwards. They're all around you. And now bring your awareness back to the room around you. Maybe taking a moment to wiggle your feet and wiggle your fingers. And then when it feels right to you, open up your eyes. And now I'll leave you to choose your pile. Go to the timestamp that corresponds with your pile once you've chosen. And I will see you there. Bye. Hi, pile number 1. Welcome to your reading. You chose the shadow card, and we're going to start out by turning this over and reading it. So, the dark side of the ego, the conscious self. Shadow represents the aspects of personality that we would prefer to keep hidden. Jung defined it as the thing a person has no wish to be, a primitive, instinctive side that is increasingly likely to emerge the more we try to suppress it. It can take the form of an advisor who tells us truths we would prefer not to know, but more commonly appears threateningly as a sinister stranger or as an assailant. So there's some visualization and interpretation prompts that come with these. I think I'll save these for the end of the reading when we actually kind of tie things together. So just making sure that's centered. Okay. So we are going to start with an oracle card. This is from the Sacred Earth Oracle deck. And so let's see what's going on for pile 1. Where does this shadow originate from? Or what's it trying to tell us? Oh, Alliance. That's a very fascinating card to get for this reading. Okay. I guess I'll put these right here. And so we are going to get down into the meaning of this dream with the tarot cards. Whoa! Okay. So please show me pile 1's dream. That 8 of Cups, I always tell people this is the hero's journey card. This is the calling to leave behind everything that is familiar to you, and seek something totally new. And frankly, oftentimes the shadow is involved in these types of callings, because it's hard. The hero, yeah, here we go. Right when I said it's hard. It's hard to leave our comfort zone. There's a lot of fears. Oh. Okay. Okay then. Wow. Pile number 1, you definitely got the shadow reading. Sorry, if you're going through a rough time, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing at how on brand these cards are for shadow. Okay. I think that's enough cards. Are these even all fitting? Yeah, they are. Okay. Pile number 1. What an interesting dream. What I see is this man with light colored hair. He's embarking into the unknown, and he ends up in this Ten of Swords situation. This is kind of like setting out on a journey that you had a lot of hopes for. You might have been really apprehensive, and your worst fears are coming true. We also have this dark-haired man being depicted. So we talked about the light and the dark aspects, and what immediately came to mind from me, from my perspective, is that this kind of represents your conscious ego, and this kind of represents your shadow, because he's got this dark hair. And so in your dream, you may have found yourself traveling somewhere, and you may have encountered somebody with dark hair in your dream, or that represents your shadow. And this guy is kind of on the defensive. He's feeling under attack, which is a common experience for our shadows, because they kind of are. We often are antagonistic towards these aspects of ourselves. Like we can be antagonistic towards people that we project our shadow constructs onto. Whenever you've met somebody that you just couldn't stand, like they just get up under your skin, and they get up under your skin in a way that really doesn't kind of make sense. It's like, why do I hate this person? I just find them so irritating. You can guarantee that person is holding your shadow for you. They are exhibiting some type of trait that that you just have felt is so not allowed. Like, you are not allowed to do that. And it's because you don't allow yourself to do that. Now, sometimes this can look like something that you have a secret, unfulfilled wish to embody. But for one reason or other, you've told yourself over and over that I can't do this. If I do this, it'll end in disaster. But really, I'm seeing with the Lovers here that there is this passion and creative potential that wants to come forth in your life. And I say that because the Lovers, if we're in the context of a dream, I consider this the internal union between the ego and their anima or animus. This brings forth great creative potential, because you see the two sexes coming together, and so something is able to be given birth within the psyche. So yeah, but again, there's this tower energy. So I feel like I see the crown being thrown off and dethroned, and there is this tower. This is about a false sense of security. Like, maybe you have this really unfulfilled wish to go out and do something totally original, and not been done before. And actually, what I see here between these two cards, originally I thought the Queen of Wands is like, your bad boss bitch energy, but it could even be an overbearing part of your personality that really needs to kind of be scaled back a bit. We see this crown and everything, so I want to say there could have been an overbearing mother, because we do have this woman being depicted. It could even be a past lover or a teacher, somebody who was a woman in your life who might have been controlling, and told, or even talked down to you when you talked about your dreams and aspirations, and told you, oh, you'll never be able to do that, or for one reason or another just discouraged you from following your passion. And Yeah, I kind of see the duality here between the fire and the tower, and it's kind of like you were told these stories that like if you attempt this, then everything will just burn up in flames or whatever. And so you tend to associate danger with following your passion. But the death here, death, tower, 10 of swords, 8 of cups, I see very transformative themes coming through. And death is really the ending of something. And we go through these cycles through psychological development where parts of our personality outgrow their purpose in our life, and they can no longer carry us any further in our personal development. And so they have to be given an ending and be allowed to be put to rest so that they don't take up a lot of energy, or libido, which is psychic energy. Libido isn't necessarily sexual energy. That was more like a Freud thing, but Jung really considered the libido as your psychic energy, your motivation and enthusiasm for something. Um, what else am I seeing here? We talked about the fears of everything ending in disaster. We see the shadow, kind of like, I feel like your shadow on one hand is under attack and kind of aggressive, and you might perceive people who defend themselves, or set boundaries as really, it might just make you cringe or something, or you might become really irritated with those people or perceive them as mean or something like that. Um, when there might just be this unconscious wish to really be able to do that. And the message is that you have that ability within you. I think the Alliance card coming out with the shadow is a really positive message that your shadow has something to offer you, something positive to offer you, that this shadow construct wants the best for you. And I see there's all this red. To me, this looks like war paint. It might not be, but that's what it looks like to me. And we also have the Axis Mundi here. So this is a really incredible card to be getting out. I think that you have some gold in your shadow that wants to come out, that this might be an instinct to stand up for yourself, setting boundaries with overbearing characters in your life. And also doing away with this. I perceive this tower as a cage that you've caged yourself in with limiting beliefs. I feel that I'm really drawn to the bricks and the fortress type of appearance of the tower in this card, where it's like you're you're like the caged songbird, but you don't even realize you're a songbird. The shadow knows you're a songbird, but you just think like, oh, I belong in this cage. That's what's safe for me. That's what's most important for me. That's what mother told me, or something like that. So I see that something really wants. It's time to put an end to that, and it might even be like cutting off a specific relationship if that's what you need to do. um and I was curious about, we see the King of Cups and we see the fallen king here in this card, and I think that this is also a transformation. So this could be like, if you're a male that's watching this could be like a personal transformation of your ego, like becoming less, what do I say, the king of the king the King of Hearts. That's an interesting movie if you've never seen that movie. It's an old cult classic movie, The King of Hearts. It's about a Scottish soldier that gets stuck in a French town that becomes evacuated, but they leave everybody at the asylum back home. They just left them there, and they left the door ajar. So these people in the mental asylum come out and take over the town. It's a very interesting movie. Um, but the King of Cups is this man who, um, he's not just in touch with his emotions. He acts in, how do I describe this? Because this has been on my mind lately. Because I've noticed me doing this myself. It's becoming aware of your emotions and you drawing upon your masculine strength to be able to like negotiate or set boundaries or expectations that satisfy your emotional needs. So being able to ask for what you want from people, to ask for what you want from life, to be able to say, actually, that doesn't work for me. I'd be a lot happier if we went with this option instead. And so to me, that really helped distinguish for me what the King of Cups is actually representing and doing in these cards versus like the Queen of Cups, who is very in touch with her emotions and feels them readily and is able to see, because she feels her feelings, she can relate and connect with other people's feelings. Whereas the King of Cups is like, no, I feel my feelings and I value my feelings and I'm going to act in ways that satisfy my feelings. So this is about taking action, really. So that applies to anybody, really. So I didn't need to bring up gender earlier, but if you are a man watching this, you might feel drawn to becoming this more rounded out masculine personality where he's more in touch with his feminine instincts. And if you're a woman, this might be developing that capacity to say no to people. I mean, that applies to men too, but this is like for a woman, she has to draw upon her animus and her masculine instincts in a way where she's able to set boundaries and feel really comfortable from that and drawing upon her inner King of Cups. Whereas a man will embody this more outwardly. So I think that's a really great summary of this dream and the messages coming forth. So let's go to the books that I mentioned. So let's look up a myth. So let's just flip through and see where we land. I'm closing my eyes. Okay. Whew. What is this? The myths of South and Central Asia. We have Vishnu here. We have the great fish. Okay. Mandalas. Oh, that's a big Jungian concept. So I'm going to pause and read this and kind of draw out what's being discussed here. Okay, now that I'm reading this, I think I can just read this whole page. So especially this part about Shiva. Noble folk believed in many gods, spirits, and demons. Among their most important deities were Indra, a weather and warrior god, Varuna, a maintainer of order and morality, Agni, a fire god, Surya, a sun god, and Yama, king of the dead. Many of the gods of the Aryan invaders are venerated in India to this day. Nonetheless, some of the beliefs attributed to the people of the Indus Valley civilization were to resurface. For example, the great Hindu god Shiva is believed to have taken on some of the characteristics of the Indus Valley civilization's fertility god. Indeed, this ancient figure is sometimes known as Proto-Shiva. The god also demonstrates something of the continuity of Indian belief, the willingness of the people to adopt and assimilate deities into their own worldview. In the Rig Veda, a collection of sacred hymns composed between the 14th and 10th centuries BC, Shiva is only a minor deity known as Rudra. However, he later rose to become one of the three major gods of Hinduism, the belief system that developed from India's earlier religious traditions and prevails. Shiva also embodies the implicit contradictions of Hindu belief, that Genesis cannot take place without previous destruction, and that the ordered cosmos can only evolve from an initial state of chaos. Thus, though Shiva is known as the Destroyer, his name means auspicious. He is an ascetic, denying physical pleasures, but he is also extremely wild and has a huge sexual appetite. Whereas the Aryans believed that after death they would either ascend to the heavens or descend to the underworld, By the time of the Upanishads, sacred teachings composed between the 8th and 5th centuries BC, the human condition had come to be seen as one in which people were trapped within a relentless cycle of birth and death. The goal was to transcend the cycle and achieve liberation. It may be that such ideas, totally absent from the teachings of the Aryan invaders, had their roots in the beliefs of the Indus Valley civilizations. So this goes on and on and on. But I feel like these paragraphs were really the most important here. So, Rudra, I've talked in my astrology videos. Well, I don't know if I've brought up Rudra in my astrology videos, but he is the lord of the nakshatra Ardra, which I am an Ardra native. And Rudra is this very stormy, destructive force. He's very anger and severe, explosive. Ardra is represented by storms. So this is very much like the shadow, and he's often depicted with very dark, like almost black skin, or like gray skin. I wish they had a picture of him here. But the fact that this brings up the contradictions of Hinduism, that there's all this creativity with Brahma and everything, but there's also this need for destruction. And so we have Shiva, who is the destroyer of matter and whatnot. And so you can kind of see how that relates to this shadow archetype, where you have the light form of Shiva, and then you also have this destructive, like Rudra, angry form, like kind of like this. And how in order to create room for growth in your life, you need to be prepared to let go and release, and even break down and destroy, because otherwise there's only so much space, So take from that what you will. I hope that was interesting for you. Now let's pick random symbols. So let's see. These symbols may have shown up in your dream in some way. It might just be significant for you. So now, okay. We have the sow, and we have the Ouroboros and all. This is like serpent. No, because we were on sow, I'm gonna go with sow. So this is funny because earlier in the video I was talking about pigs. So the white sow was one of the most popular and widely distributed animal forms of the goddess. Astarte, Saradwen, and Demeter appeared as sows. One of Freya's numerous names was Sire, the sow. Carving at the Tarxian temple on Malta shows a sow with 13 teats, and we have 13 here as death. A lunar animal symbolizing the 13 annual lunations. 13 became a bad luck number only because of its ancient association with lunar goddess worship. Buddhists still speak of Marisi, the diamond sow, a great goddess seated on her lotus throne attended by 7 pigs. She is called Glorious One, Son of Happiness. The brilliant whiteness of the divine sow was perceived in the white and shiny surface of the eminently female symbolic cowrie shell, which the Romans called porcella, little sow. From this word for whiteness and shininess came our word porcelain. The brilliance of the white sow and her 7 porcelain attendants is prominent in the Celtic myth of the princess I can't fucking pronounce it. Sorry for my cussing. Goliadid, bright day, mother of Coolwitch. I can't pronounce these, and I'm Irish and I should be able to pronounce these things, but oh well. Whose name meant something like womb, a hiding place of the pig. Though the myth was partly Christianized, it retained the essential episode of Goliadid giving birth in a sow's lair. Obviously, she is the sow mother, the sow goddess, and Coolwitch is the young hog that she carries in her sow's hiding place, her womb. Later, Coolwitch, stole a comb from the head of the magic boar, Turith, who may have been a sow originally, because he lay in his lair with his 7 piglets, something that only a female pig would do. The Welsh saints Dyfrig, Kentigern, Cadog, and Brenach all were said to have founded monasteries at places where they were led by a magic white sow. This is fairly good evidence that all of them were only pseudo-saints or loosely Christianized versions of earlier pagan heroes, the men of the sow. So you might have encountered a pig in your dream, or this might be pointing out that there is some like the feminine instinct, I would say, is probably very important to you in some way. Either, again, like this could be, I was getting mother stuff coming up from here, or something like that, like the wounded feminine, really. And when the feminine is wounded, you know, it can be hard to feel secure and nourished in your life. So it's very worthwhile to heal your feminine wound if you have one. And I am going to end now with an affirmation card. So put these aside. One affirmation card. Okay, that was quick. I witness the darkness and call on the light with my prayer. Thank you, universe, for guiding me to perceive this fear through the eyes of the teacher of love. I think this is a wonderful card to be getting for shadow work, because that's really what it's about, right? So it's really natural to experience deep, significant fear when confronting the shadow, or encountering the shadow in any way. And when you experience fear, it's really a cry for love, right? And if you have this wounded feminine aspect, it can be, you might not have received that as a child, and that might be the source of this shadow construct within your psyche. And being able to bear witness to those deep wounds and that hurt shadow is a really important work. It's very courageous work. It takes a lot of bravery, but really, like, it's about shifting your perspective. Instead of facing fear and becoming like recoiling and being avoided, like, I don't want that, get away from me or whatever, being able to perceive fear with compassion for yourself is often the medicine that is needed to build this alliance with the shadow, to be able to relate to these shadow constructs within yourself and have compassion for them, and allow them a place in your conscious life. And, you know, when you are integrating the shadow, it's very common to encounter hiccups because, like I mentioned before, the content or the instincts that have been relegated to the shadow are still yet undifferentiated. They haven't been allowed a seat in your conscious life. And so when you begin drawing upon these instincts, it can be a lot like trying to learn to walk for the first time, and you might stumble and make mistakes and be really embarrass yourself at times, but that's necessary, you know, because if you never learn to use your legs, you never try, even if you step and stumble along the way, like, you know, that's the only way to learn how to walk and learn how to actually use these legs and make them functional for you. So pile number 1, I hope this is really illuminating for you. It was a very interesting pile, and I really appreciate having the opportunity to do this reading for you. Please like and subscribe to my videos and channel if you do like them. And I would really appreciate any feedback that you have for me in the comments. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care during this time. And oh, that's right. I was gonna go over this. So here are these exercises on the back of this card. Good thing I remembered. Visualization. So these are things that you can do to kind of get in touch with the shadow part of yourself. So visualization. Imagine yourself as a gorilla wrestling with a circus tamer. Overcome the tamer and escape, causing chaos and devastation. Envisage and I can't pronounce that. Envisage yourself as the same gorilla, free in the wild and at one with your environment. So that's you placing yourself. The tamer is usually the ego or the super ego. The gorilla, this is the shadow. And so doing this visualization exercise is going to put you in your shadow's perspective and being able to imagine what it's like to live as your shadow. Interpretation prompts. So this is about your dream in particular. So kind of keep these questions with you when you think about your dream and you think about this reading and how they might apply. So, in what ways were your dream events violent or brutish? Were any characters in your dream persecuted, selfish, hateful, or obsessive? How were these characters controlled? Were you or did you become one of them? How did the dream enact any of your most secret or most shocking impulses? Has the dream brought you to an awareness of any strong negative emotions? Okay, pile number 1. Now it's the end of your reading. Psych, pile number 1, it's actually not the end of your reading yet. I decided to do a voiceover and recommend a book to you. It is called Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert A. Johnson. There will be a link in the description. It's a pretty short and easy read, and I recommend that you check it out, especially because this reading focused almost entirely on shadow work, and that's what that book is about. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe to my videos and leave a comment with some feedback if you have any. I really appreciate and I really like hearing about how people are connecting to these readings. So thank you for being here and have a great rest of your time. See you later. Bye. Hi, pile number 2. This is your reading. You chose the ascending and descending card. So as I said in the intro, this can be interpreted in many different ways. So we're going to start by reading the back. Ascent and descent often express direction in life. Ascent represents aspiration and achievement. Descent may represent decline or failure, or it may refer to the transition into unconsciousness. Stairs can stand for deliberate, step-by-step advances, escalators for steady progress, elevators for instant transitions. If dream ascents or descents are interrupted or reversed, this can imply a need for the dreamer to reflect upon his or her life or to try to change the direction in which he or she is moving. We're going to save the visualization and the interpretation prompts for the end of the reading. And we'll start with your oracle card to try and get a bit of context around what this ascent and descent theme is trying to communicate. So, one oracle card, please. Oh, that was quick. We got perception. Ooh. Okay. Very interesting. Okay. That might be perceiving choices. To To me, this is like we talked about ascending into the upper realms of consciousness. So this could be like perceiving spiritual truths or spiritual wisdom. It could be receiving information that changes how you look at your ascent or descent. Yeah, very interesting. So let's kind of spell out this dream. Whoa, okay. With the cards. So what wants to come out for pile number 2? Okay. Okay. This is too many cards. The Lovers. Okay. Yeah, you jumped out just like that, huh? So you really want to come out, but I really prefer when I get one card at a time, please. I kind of want these to be on top of each other. I feel like this is a loss from the past. You have the Page of Cups. Too many cards. Okay. Let's see. I think we have space for one more card. How did I know that I was literally thinking about this card? Because I was thinking about when I saw the Ten of Pentacles side by side with this. I guess, okay, let me see if I can squeeze these around. I'm kind of getting into the shadow of my tea mug. Sorry about that. My dog started barking very loudly. Anyways, when I saw this man gazing at, and it's like this shadowy kind of figure, I felt like he's looking at something that he feels like he can't have, or like there's some sense of envy or something. And then I was like, but then why wouldn't the Four of Cups come out? And then it came out. And to me, this is like, the vibe I'm getting from this is kind of like some bitterness and envy, that came through. It's like, why can't I have that? Or being like, well, these 3 cups are kind of poo-poo, and I wish I had a better cup. And really like feeling some envy around this, and maybe feeling some scarcity and frustration, especially with the Two of Pentacles. There's like all this juggling. But the message with the Four of Cups is that like there's this hand materializing, like, hey, I've got your cup right here, you can have it. But hey, hello, trying to get your attention, but it's just not going through. So let me think about this, because we started off really strong. This Eight of Wands is like very, very fast. And you can't, I guess they're pointing downward, so they kind of point to a dissension, or a descent. But then we see this portal here, and when I think of ascending, descending, especially the going between different levels of consciousness, this can definitely be that. The world card is like maybe descending and coming out and feeling like really transformed by a recent experience, and maybe it like happened all in a flash. And again, we have the Lovers, which to me is like having a really strong desire, and maybe there's like a really strong desire to be able to produce something very meaningful and enduring and everlasting in your life, but feeling like you're just being thwarted, or feeling frustrated, or like your path has been frustrated. Yeah, and I was kind of drawing upon this card with perception is kind of like trying to shift how you're looking at things. And really, I think there is a new perspective that wants to come out, but what does this have to do with ascent and descent? It's very interesting. We can talk a little bit about inflation, but I feel like I kind of went over that enough in the intro, and really what I want to do is recommend a book to you. It's called Contentment by Robert A. Johnson, because these cards to me are kind of pointing to a struggle to feel contentment. And we see like the wheel, not the not the wheel of fortune, but like the hamster wheel. I'm getting hamster wheel vibes from this Two of Pentacles. It's like you're spinning your wheels but not really getting anywhere meaningful, and feeling ready to just kind of walk away from everything and give up with the Eight of Cups. But yet we have this rich, creative, abundant energy that wants to come through. But I really think it's just your perception and your mindset that is blocking you. And that book, Contentment, I wish I had the physical copy so I could flip through it here, but it really is speaking about the oscillations of going from high to low, because you're deriving your happiness from something external to you rather than going within, which is what the Page of Cups is kind of offering here. Like, hey, we've got, but maybe you perceive it's like, oh, you're just a page. I really want like the filthy rich king or whatever lifestyle, and you kind of having like a belittling perspective towards your own inner strength and power, which is quite powerful, because we have the World here, which is I think it's interesting that it comes out between the Lovers, because I was saying in the previous reading how the Lovers is kind of like the inner union with the self, yourself, and like your anima or your animus, which is like the inner masculine or the inner feminine. It depends on how you are identified, but generally it's the opposite sex, because it's about procreative, and this isn't about literally having babies or children, but it can be. But it's about your creative ability of the psyche to birth forth through new creative projects or new ways of being, new ways of identifying with yourself. And when I'm getting kind of scatterbrained with this one. It's really interesting because of some of the cards that we have, but there's also just multiple layers of meaning that wants to come through. So there's this coming together of opposites, and how this inner union gives creative potential to the psyche. But also we have this portal of really being able to come in contact with your true self. Now, in Jungian psychology, we have, you can imagine that your total psyche is a circle. And maybe I'll use my whiteboard to demonstrate this. Okay, I can flip it around. I have stuff written on the back that I don't want to give up. But you can think of the psyche as a circle. This is like your total being. And then we have, this is the unconscious, and this is consciousness. And within consciousness, we have this square. This is the ego. And then there's multiple layers of the unconscious. There's the anima or the animus. So these are the inner masculine or inner feminine. These are our relating functions, and they are archetypal. They are archetypal representations of our experiences with masculinity or femininity, and it's contradictory to what your given sex is. So if you're a female, you have an animus. If you're a male, you have an anima. So you have an inner feminine or an inner masculine. And this figure kind of acts as a mediator between the ego and the unconscious. And then also within the unconscious is the self with a capital S. So this is like this all-encompassing selfhood, and it's really the one that's kind of running the show. The ego thinks it's running the show, but really it's the self. And the self is kind of transpersonal in a way. The ego is personal, but the self is transpersonal in a way. And so we often experience the self in dreams, symbolized by these transpersonal figures, so like gods and goddesses and otherworldly beings. And often there's an androgynous quality because the transpersonal doesn't really have gender. It's the androgen. Androgen? I never really figured out how to pronounce that. This was handy. So, sorry, hold on. I'm going to erase this. So this is kind of representative of like this self aspect, this higher self that's coming through, and maybe you're trying to access this and it kind of want to offer something to you. There's like there's an opportunity for transformation here, which I mean there always is for everybody. That's what individuation is. But I feel like you're a little stunted in your individuation because you kind of have these really lower level concerns that are like scarcity mindset and kind of caught up in really having a belittling aspect towards yourself or comparing yourself to others, and just being generally unsatisfied, not really being able to see the value in your life. And yeah, how do I want to tie this together? It's an interesting reading for sure. I'm feeling the vibe and the energy, but it's not exactly easy for me to articulate. Well, I'm drawing a huge blank, and when I do that, often the message that needed to be said was said, and that I said enough. So I just might not need to be saying anymore. So it's a pretty straightforward reading. When it comes to the ascent and descent, I really think that you would get a lot out of this book, Contentment by Robert A. Johnson, and I'll link that in the description. It really provides a lot of great information for tackling these themes that I'm seeing in these cards. In terms of dreams, I mean, I guess you might have seen, kind of images that are similar in these cards in your dream. But the message, I think, is really trying to tell you that you're kind of down in the muck of mucky thinking and not really productive thinking, and that there's a way to shift your perspective and achieve a different level of consciousness that is really going to elevate your life. And so let's pull an affirmation card. That will be well, I guess we'll do an affirmation card right now, but then we're going to pull from the books too. So let's see, an affirmation card, please. Okay. The moment I realign with love, clear direction is presented to me. So yeah, that, I feel like your mindset is kind of aligned with these lower level energies right now, and kind of elevating that to a more loving, positive mindset is going to help make your direction clearer so that you feel less stuck and in the muck. Now let's look at a myth. Let's see. I'm closing my eyes, I'm flipping through. Let's see. Ooh, okay. We got a lot of different images here. I want to look at the Norns. I'm most drawn to that. So the Norns, or Nornr, were the Germanic fates, the goddesses of destiny. The original Norn was undoubtedly Urd, fate. The Well of Urd, which was situated under one of the roots of the great cosmic tree Yggdrasil. I never knew how to pronounce these, so I really suck at enunciating even in the English language, and that's my native language, so I'm going to butcher everything that doesn't sound familiar to me. The cosmic tree Yggdrasil was the site where the gods held their daily assembly. The two other Norns known by name are Verdandi and Skuld. It was believed that the Norns decided the destinies of gods, giants, and dwarves, as well as of humankind. The Anglo-Saxons called Urd by the name of Wyrd, and in England there was maintained a belief in the tremendous powers of the three sisters long after the arrival of Christianity. For instance, in Shakespeare's tragic play Macbeth, the three sisters on the blasted heath obviously owed something to the Norns. A clear parallel of the Norns are the Moirae, or Fates, encountered in Greek mythology. As in the Germanic mythic tradition, they were seen as three sister goddesses, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. It would seem more than possible that the Norns were also originally thought of as spinners. However, in Germanic mythology, the Greek and Roman concept of the fates spinning an individual length of yarn for each mortal life does not appear. Oh, okay. Apparently that's it. Yep. And then I wanted to also look at Njord. Njord was the Germanic sea god, a member of the divine race of Vanir, and father of the fertility gods Freyr and Freya. When peace was agreed between the Aesir and Vanir, the two branches of the divine family, Njord, Freyr and Freya, came to live with the Aesir as a sign of goodwill. According to some versions of the myth, the mother of Freyr and Freya was Njord's own sister Nerthus. But since the Aesir disapproved of marriage between brother and sister, Nerthus did not accompany her husband and children to Asgard. Njord's second marriage was to the frost giantess Skadi, who chose him on the basis of his beautiful feet. However, the couple could not agree about where they should live. Njord found Skadi's home in Jotunheim, the land of the frost giants, too cold and barren, while Skadi disliked the noise and bustle of shipbuilding around Njord's hall of Nautun in Asgard. After 9 nights in each place, they decided to live apart. Skadi went back to her favorite pastime of hunting on skis, and weather-beaten Njord returned to a life at sea. The apparently unbridgeable gap between them probably reflects more than personal taste. Njord was certainly seen as a god of fertility, since he provided to those who worshipped him not only safe voyages at sea, but also wealth and good fortune in the form of lands and sons. Skadi's associations were quite different, however. She came from a range of frozen mountains, where heavy clouds masked the sun and harsh rocks made the ground as barren as death. In her wild and unforgiving land, where nothing was able to grow or prosper at all, there was hardly any scope for humankind. So to me, this is really reminding me of this negative mindset. It's like there's this fertility that really wants to thrive in your life, but it can't thrive in a barren landscape. And the landscape is like, this mindset that we're talking about. And then also the Norns, the story of the Norns really spoke to me about this resigned nature, like I'm resigned to my fate there and I'm powerless to do anything about it, which is, this is a victim identity that needs to be overcome. Okay, so that was interesting. You might have seen parallels of these myths in your dreams. It's not uncommon for dreams to take on these archetypal mythological motifs, especially when they're like quote unquote big dreams that really have something to say to you and a really big message that needs to be heeded. So you might have dreamed of 3 women like spinning your fate, a spinner or something like that. You might have dreamed of a husband and wife going separate ways or something like that, like Njord and Scotty here. And you might certainly see that with this departure theme kind of coming up. And the 10 of Pentacles is depicting a happy family, like maybe this is a loss that you experienced and you're like, oh, I can never get that back or anything like that. So yeah. Now we are going to flip to a symbol. This symbol may have appeared in your dream. It might just be helpful for you. So we'll see where we want to land. Okay, that's interesting because it's blank. Because it's coming from... Okay, we have the womb. Okay. But it's also blank. So I thought that was really interesting. It's like... I feel like kind of the message here and stuff is that like when you see blankness or like a blank canvas, it's like you really have the ability to make what you want of this situation. So the womb. The holiest symbols of Paleolithic and Neolithic humanity were symbols of the womb, source of life, primary fountainhead of every creative process. The Sanskrit word for a temple meant womb. The Sumerian word for the underworld, the sacred cave, and the womb was Matu, the universal root word for mother. When we're talking about the underworld, this is definitely like if you dreamed about a descent into the underworld, this is getting kind of into the symbols of that. And usually the underworld, a descent into consciousness is often a feminine type of journey, because when you go into like deep darkness and nothingness, there is like this cosmic womb type of symbology that occurs with that. Anyways, the womb is, I'm thinking of this passage from a book by Joseph Campbell. I have to read this, so let me pause and pull it up. Oh my gosh, well, I can't find the specific passage I'm thinking about, but I can get the gist of it. It's talking about how psychological transformation often is mythologically represented and acted out ritualistically in religions as a second rebirth. And basically a lot of the goal symbolically of different rituals and whatnot is to create this womb environment where the psyche is allowed to develop and transform and fully mature and be able to be rebirthed and gone out and achieved your great highest potential, really. So I thought that was interesting, especially because wombs are often thought of as portals. Like if we think of the nakshatra Bharani, which is represented by the womb, this is a portal between life and death, and we have a portal here with the world card, and the true self is emerging out of it. Ooh, okay, I'm kind of getting topsy-turvy. I'm bouncing all over the place with this. It's cool. I'm fine with it. I'm sure you're fine with it too, but it's just, there's a lot of rich imagery to come out. And so we're talking about the descent, kind of into this dark, wet place. That's a womb. And it kind of creates, it's like a crucible for transformation, and you're able to emerge out of that like a changed person. So you might be descending into a really trying and difficult journey, but there's really this potential. So, anyways, to the Pygmies of Africa, the same word meant the great cavern that stood for the mother of God. To Simon Magus, paradise was defined as the mother's womb. The most revered oracle shrine in Greece was named Delphi, meaning womb. It was originally dedicated to the great goddess under such names as Themis, Gaia, and Phoebe. The legendary first priestess, Delphine, was murdered by Apollo when he took over the shrine. A similar druidic shrine still stands in Pembrokeshire, the Pentre Evan Cromlech, called the finest in Britain. Once entirely enclosed, it formed a dark chamber where initiates were placed for a number of days before ritual rebirth from Ceridwen's womb. That was exactly what I was about to say with that Joseph Campbell stuff. I hadn't read this yet. So, initiatory, baptismal, and consecration ceremonies the world over show men setting up womb imitations to represent rebirth into a new condition of life. They seem to be unable to imagine any other way of symbolizing this, even when participants are entirely male. A symbolic womb was the Hindu priest's cloak, called womb of knighthood, from which a king was brought forth in his coronation ceremony. The pre-Christian womb shrine of Glastonbury was formerly called Caerwydr. Its sacred well, running red with iron oxides, was thought to be the blood flow from the goddess's life-giving womb. Christian legend appropriated the Glastonbury temple and called it the home for a while of the Holy Grail. In Shakespeare's time, even an old word for a womb, cod, had been masculinized and newly defined as a scrotum, hence codpiece, the trouser flap worn by men, the Renaissance version of a fly front. Another Greek word for the womb, hysteria, gave its name to an annual festival of Aphrodite and also to an imaginary cause of feminine illness dating back to Greek medical ignorance, but enthusiastically credited by doctors throughout the Christian era. It was believed that the womb sometimes detached itself from its moorings and wandered about inside a woman's body, causing troubles in the lungs, heart, kidneys, and brain. Up to the 18th century, churchmen still believed in the uterine causes of hysteria and recommended exorcism and conjuration as the only cures. The original name of Israel meant the tribe of Sarah. Her name was formerly Sarai, the queen, a name of the great goddess in Nabatean inscriptions. Priests changed her name to Sarah in the 6th century BC. The old Hebrew term for a tribe was the same as the word for mother, and a tribal subdivision was batten or belly. The word for a kin group meant womb, a relic of the original Hebraic matriarchy. Sarah's tomb was said to be occupied by the matriarchal queen and her descendants in the female line, together with her husband and the spouses of her matrilineal progeny. Ancestors of the Jews were only those accepted by the matriarchs Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel as members of their descent group. Oh, that's interesting. Descent. Not all of Abraham's offspring were considered Israelites, but only those stemming from Sarah. These and many similar bits of evidence point to the womb symbol as one of the most significant in terms of kinship groups, spiritual ideas, and human culture in general. If there had never been such powerful bonding of uterine blood relatives in the distant past, the cooperative efforts required by civilization could hardly have made a start. Though patriarchal society has succeeded in preempting almost completely the meanings and significance of the womb, yet there is an essential element missing, and its lack is felt, if not understood, by all the modern world. Okay, I think that was it. Wow, that was really cool. Another thing that came to mind was what I get from the reading is that there's this spiritual depression, which is kind of like a descent or like a falling flat from this, cycle of ups and downs and whatnot. Again, that book by Robert Johnson, Contentment, and it really only takes a very little time to read, very short books. I love him as an author because he's really great at putting things, getting straight to the point with his writing. Very easy to comprehend. Anyways, you might be longing for community or feeling disconnected either from source or God or spirit. So like a spiritual depression, a dark night of the soul, or just feeling abandoned by God. And that might speak to an early childhood wound, like a mother wound or a father wound. If you felt emotionally abandoned at some point in your life. And that might be kind of what is being called to be healed here. So pile number 2, I think that summarizes your reading. So we are going to go to the back of this card now and do the exercises. So this is with regards to your dream that you brought to this reading. So doing this visualization exercise and doing these prompts can kind of help you understand your dream better. So visualization. Imagine flying on the back of a large bird high over the countryside. You rise to the clouds and then descend again and land in the bough of a tree or bough. Picture yourself meeting up with a whole flock of birds, with you as the leader. Try to recapture the excitement of this prior to sleep. That's a very fascinating visualization exercise with us talking about community, finding your flock of birds. Interpretation prompts. Why were you going up or down in your dream? What things lay ahead or behind you? Was your movement smooth or erratic? Did you stop or change direction? When you arrived at your destination, was it unexpected in any way? So pile number 2, that is your reading. I hope that this information helps you understand yourself better. Please like and subscribe to my channel and leave a comment. I really am interested in how people connect to these readings, and I really like hearing from people. So if you feel like leaving a comment, please do that. Ooh, sorry, I'm burping. And pile number 2, have a great rest of your day. I really hope this information helps you and that you're able to integrate these psychological happenings that are going on. It's very interesting. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, pile number 3. This is your reading. You chose the wise old man or woman. So let's read that. A figure of authority. Ooh. Wise old man or woman represents superior insight and higher states of consciousness. He or she might be personified as a doctor, a professor, a priest, or a wise grandparent, but can also appear as a magician, a wizard, or a shaman set on the path of self-knowledge. In men's dreams, the wise old man often takes on aspects of the self. Why'd they leave out women? In women's dreams, this can also be aspects of the self. This is like the old crone, the medicine woman or grandmother that can appear in your dream. This is like a wise adult, an inner wise adult that you have internalized that appears to you. So we'll go over the visualization and interpretation prompts at the end of the reading after we've gone over some of the meat of the dream message. So we're going to pull an oracle card now to get some context around what this wise old man or woman wanted to say. So the card that came out is Unity. And it's depicting this angel hugging the planet. So to me, this is a very transpersonal image and definitely speaking about higher states of consciousness and bringing down spiritual wisdom and onto the level of consciousness. So transpersonal workings, the ego's perspective is very limited, and it can be difficult to access these higher levels of consciousness without experiencing some type of surrender or release from the ego. The ego has to surrender and willingly sacrifice or let go of ideas about its superiority, or even letting go of like needing absolute control or something like that, in order to be able to receive the wisdom from the sage archetype that's coming out here. So we have the wise old man or woman. This is also just the sage. This is the crone or the hermit. So let's get into the dream itself, or the messages that are trying to come through. What were the motives that came out in this dream? For pile number 3, please. Okay. So the Queen of Pentacles. Scooch my chair in. The 10 of Pentacles. The King of Swords. I see. We have Death. We have the Queen of Swords. These cards are really talking, and there's some interesting things. The Knight of Cups. I think your dream probably had a lot of people featured in it. Sometimes you have those dreams where like there's just a lot of different characters going on. And we have the Six of Pentacles. The Six of Pentacles came out when I was shuffling the cards before I even started filming. So I always do like a major shuffle before I even start working with these, and then I always shuffle in between readings. Okay, these cards have come out in the Lovers and the Eight of Cups have come out in every single reading so far. So that's interesting. But often these dreams are very, you know, these motifs that we talk about, these cards are often very, very commonly associated with the themes that come up in those things. Okay, so that's it for the tarot cards. Let me take a gander at this. The first thing that jumped out to me was the king, the death of a king. So I feel like the King of Swords is very, we were talking about that ego surrender. I always perceive him as this very rigid, kind of controlling type of energy. And we have like the king and the queen that both came out. So that's very, very interesting. I think this woman here, so, okay. One thing that came to mind is that there's an overbearing masculine figure in the psyche. This can be, sometimes these older sage archetypes can come through in a very negative way. They can be very critical of us and domineering. And usually that is pointing to a parental wound that happened in childhood. Like you might have been harshly reprimanded or even emotionally abused and abandoned as a child. And so that kind of, those experiences of trauma pervert the archetypes and how they manifest in our psyche, because the archetypes hold the potential for all manifestations of the archetype, but the way that they appear to us become influenced and differentiated by our personal experiences with these archetypal forms in our life. So you may have had an overbearing father or masculine figure in your life, maybe even a grandfather who was very harsh to you, and who maybe exited your life in some way, may have died, but also like this aspect of your personality or superego that got developed and became very so when we're children and we're being interacted with by caretaker figures in our life, we internalize their image and voices and language that they use with us and direct it at ourselves. And I think this is saying that that part of our personality is has been taken care of and is ending, has fallen away, or there has been like a very firm declaration or boundary set. But then I feel like this woman here goes on to become the Queen of Swords. Like, I almost feel like maybe you witnessed something that was traumatic, like violence or trauma that happened to a man in your life, that made you put your guard up and become a very guarded and detached person, like very emotionally detached. There's like this strong reliance upon rationality for a sense of security. Yeah. And maybe like at the beginning, you felt very nourished and comforted and secure and happy, but then this event happened that left you feeling really cold and hardened. Like the Queen of Pentacles was transformed into this Queen of Swords by having witnessed something really, kind of traumatic, like that kind of broke apart a family. Maybe there was even infidelity or something that created some type of mistrust in these older masculine figures. Or sometimes it's the reverse, and it was mother or feminine who betrayed us, but I'm really getting the sense that this was a masculine figure. The thing though is that we have this king, or not, this Knight of Cups making an offering. I'm drawn to the wings on his helmet. It's like, it's actually kind of interesting. You've got fish fins on the knees, but then you've got these wings. So it's kind of like there's like an integration between the mind and the emotions that wants to come forth and kind of make an offering and bring some balance back into things. And I see, so each time the Lovers has come out in this reading, I've talked about the inner union, but I see it as there's a balance being achieved, that kind of healing from this trauma. And we have unity here and the Lovers coming out. What exactly are we talking about here? You might be called to go on like a spiritual retreat or a spiritual journey to really connect with a higher form of consciousness, but it really, like, there's some healing that needs to take place or has taken place to prepare you for that. And then we see this departure, the Eight of Cups. That's what I mean about the spiritual journey. The Eight of Cups for me is very, very, corresponds very strongly with the Hermit card, because, sorry, I had to cut out a moment because my mind wandered and squirreled way too hard. Anyways, so there's this balance being restored in the psyche through this taking down of an inner tyrant or whatever, and it's able to prepare you to receive spiritual wisdom. And I see that as like the angel here is being repeated. Actually, sorry, my husband came home. Anyways, this angel is being repeated. Like, we have this angel with very fiery wings, depicting unity and coming through, bringing spiritual wisdom down into earth consciousness. And we have that same motif kind of being repeated here in the Lovers card. So I'm really drawn to the angel, and I feel like you're receiving some really important information that's helping you heal and helping you bring balance to the psyche, and kind of kind of finding your calling and what your passion is, and being led by the heart, being allowed to have your heart guide you rather than have your mind take the lead, which mind is usually ego. And when we have the ego trying to control everything, it usually very much limits our world by quite a bit, because the ego's perspective is incredibly limited, especially compared to higher consciousness and transpersonal happenings and spiritual happenings. Like, spirit has a way wider perspective on life and resources and pathways for manifestation than the ego could ever conceive of. So this, I feel like, is about expanding and leaving behind old wounds and old patterns and beliefs, and kind of being led to what I was going to say earlier was that the Eight of Cups for me is really tied to the Hermit, which is this departure from society and a kind of self-imposed isolation and giving up of the material realm. And we kind of see that with this Ten of Pentacles here and the Death, and moving away from that and kind of getting more into like a balanced, equitable state rather than this purely materiality kind of state. So that's an interesting direction that went in. Let's look at the myth book. Okay, so we're going to see where this lands and just read what I feel drawn to. Okay, so we had yin and yang pop out first, and I thought that was interesting. So we're in the Taoist part of the book. We're going to come back to here, but first we're going to do yin and yang. Taoist philosophy centered on the principle of unity in the cosmos and the belief that a natural order based on balance and harmony determined the behavior of everything in existence. Two interacting forces held the Chinese universe in delicate balance. Yin, the female element, was associated with coldness, darkness, softness, and the earth. It originally referred to the shady side of the mountain, Yang, which that's being depicted here in the Eight of Cups. Yang, the sunny side, was the male principle associated with light, warmth, hardness, and the heavens. The two forces were opposites but mutually dependent and needed to be in equilibrium for harmony to exist. They were present in every aspect of the world, in contrasting pairs such as life and death, or good and evil, as well as in everyday activities, objects, animals, and human characters. In the ancient Chinese creation myth, yin and yang were held inside the cosmic egg until the struggle of the opposing forces cracked the shell. Okay, and so then this was the page we really ended on. Where do we want to begin? So Guan Yin, or Kuan Yin, is Chinese Buddhism's goddess of mercy or compassion. She developed from the male Bodhisattva, or Buddha-to-be, Avalokiteshvara, known in Japan as Kwanan, and helps all beings on earth to attain enlightenment. Guan Yin was herself originally regarded as male, but increasingly gained female characteristics, believed to bless women with... Whoa, okay, so yeah. That transition from the King of Swords into the Queen of Swords is kind of interesting. Guan Yin was herself originally regarded as male, blah, 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 blah. Believed to bless women with children, she is sometimes depicted holding a child in her arms. However, she may also be represented as a Bodhisattva with 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes. She sometimes appears in the guise of a young woman holding a fish basket, standing on clouds, the clouds that are on this woman's cloak. This is very interesting, blowing my mind right here. Standing on clouds or riding on the back of a dragon in front of a waterfall. Guan Yin was believed to live on a mountain or an island in the Eastern Sea. She is said to have introduced humankind to the cultivation of rice, which she makes wholesome by filling each kernel with her own milk. The goddess comes to the aid of all those who need her help, especially when they are threatened by water, demons, fire, or the sword. Oh, because those King of Swords and the Queen of Swords. She is sometimes said to stand on a cliff in the middle of flaming waves and rescue shipwrecked people from the sea, the symbol of samsara, the ceaseless round of earthly existence. The 14th century novel Journey to the West, which is said to provide a popular record of Chinese mythology, tells how the Monkey King went up to heaven where he stole the peaches of immortality from the garden of Jiwang Mu, the Queen Mother of the West. The monkey incurred the wrath of all the gods and was finally taken captive by Buddha. However, Guan Yin interceded on the monkey's behalf, and he was allowed to accompany a Buddhist pilgrim during his journey to India. Oh. I'm going because that's really interesting because of the Hindu god Hanuman, who was like a monkey god. Anyways, another myth tells how Guan Yin was the third daughter of King Miao Zong. She entered a religious order against the wishes of her father, who did all he could to persuade her to remain in the outside world. Eventually, the king decided that he would have to kill her. However, Yan Luo Wang, Lord of Death, appeared and led Guan Yin away to his underworld kingdom. There, Guan Yin soothed the damned and transformed hell into a paradise. Yan Luo Wang then released Guan Yin, and she was reborn on an island where she protected seafarers from storms. Her father then fell ill, and Guan Yin healed him by cooking a piece of her own flesh for him to eat. In gratitude, the king ordered a statue of his daughter to be made. However, the sculptor misunderstood the king's instructions and made a statue with 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes. Guan Yin is also credited with the ability to release prisoners from their chains, remove poison from snakes, and deprive lightning of its power. She's believed to be capable of curing almost every sickness. A very popular goddess, her image is often found in people's homes, and the festivals of her birth and enlightenment are endowed with great significance by Buddhists. Okay, my mind is blown by the motives that came up in that passage, because we have the god of death here taking right here. So this is like Guan Yin and her father, but it also talks about the transition between the male attributes into the feminine attributes, and also protection from swords and cloaked in clouds. Very, very cool. And this coming into balance with the yin and yang. Very cool things. If your dream may have depicted a lot of symbols that were found in this myth and in these cards, and it could also be about a father-daughter wound. Like, you may be a daughter of a father who betrayed you, and yeah, there's a lot of material, psychic material in this myth that came up all of a sudden. I was kind of trying to figure out like how to tie this all together. But yeah, Guan Yin might be a wise woman that's appearing in your dreams. Like, she might be an archetype of a wise woman. She might be taking on this transpersonal angel. Like, you might be really protected by a feminine angel in your life. Yeah, very, very cool. What do I want to say about that? I just think that the initial message is still kind of the same, where it's like there's this over reliance on the mind and ego, and seeking control and security through control, whereas there's another way. There's and that's an imbalanced way. You want to also be in touch with your emotions, and this feminine aspect might be coming in to heal that for you. Yes, and restoring balance between the masculine and the feminine, because when we have these kinds of wounds, or we witness something that really shows us that we cannot, as women, that we cannot depend on the men in our life, we often take on those masculine traits as our own, and this leads to what can be called animus possession. And really, for animus possession to take place, which is when the ego becomes identified with, the ego of a woman becomes identified with masculinity, basically, and loses her femininity. Two things have to take place. First, there has to be a weakened identification with womanhood. So if you were victimized as a woman, that easily creates those conditions. Or if you had an emotionally absent mother, which, you know, I'm not really seeing. I see the Queen of Pentacles here, but I'm not sensing mother. You know, I feel like there was an absent mother. And when there's an emotionally absent mother, or there's emotional abandonment, the feminine identity becomes weakened, because what the child is learning, what the daughter is learning, is that femininity is bad, and to be feminine is bad. It leads to hurt and pain. It leads to me being victimized. And then, and so this creates kind of a vacuum for the animus, or the inner masculine, to take over the personality of the woman. And because women aren't men, they kind of become overly aggressive and overly rigid, and in denial of their feminine emotions. And yeah, I see this woman kind of protecting this child. So I feel like this is happening to protect an inner child wound. Yeah, and the wise woman might just be coming in as like a transpersonal mother figure to kind of help heal that relationship. Very, very fascinating. So I wonder if that is something that you relate to. And now we're going to go into the symbol book. Okay, so let's see. You have a bunch of trees. I don't know. I'm not feeling this. I don't think I did it right. So let me take a second. Okay. We're still in a similar area, but different thing. Where do we want to start? I feel drawn to this. So let's look at wood. The illustration shows the alchemical symbol for wood, a stylized tree topped by a trefoil, the black trunk bearing an odd resemblance to a witch's hat. Here may be seen the intermediate step between the wooden club or wand of the tarot suit. Often shown in older deck designs as a real club, the modern club, which is simply a trefoil on a flat base and resembles a clover more than a club. Both designs originated, however, with the idea of wood. The former sacredness of wood is somewhat preserved in the modern custom of knocking wood to avert ill luck. This began as an invocation of a tree spirit and an expression of gratitude to the knocked upon tree, in assurance that the source of good fortune was not forgotten. So that's one symbol. Let's just go ahead and read all of these. So willow. Oh, so we have weeping willow, grandmother willow, like from the Pocahontas movie. That's a wise old woman. Medieval churchmen claimed that witches or daughters of Satan go to the willow tree to forswear God, that the willow begets serpents, and that willows are the devil's trees. So we have the snake in the tree here in the Lovers. Planted by streams to lure men into a watery grave. The legendary witch Kundry laughed at Christ, they said, but found comfort in a willow grove. All these disparaging remarks about willows stem from their notorious connection with ancient goddess figures. Willow wands were used for divination by the hermaphroditic Scythian priests called Inaries, after the goddess Inara, as she was called in several Indo-European and Hittite tongues. The Greeks knew her as Helise, or Helise, meaning willow. Helise was a virgin form of Hecate guarding Mount Helison. I'm not good at pronouncing things. The home of the Muses. Her willow wand was a cosmic symbol connected with the stars. The pole encircling constellation of Ursa Major was sometimes known as Helice's axle. This constellation was also Artemis. One of those names was the Godisma, the willow-bound one, because her arms were wound with willow branches. A 17th century herbal continued to insist that the moon owns the willow. The willow was sacred to the goddess Arianrhod in Celtic tradition and was called the letter S, Sail, in the tree alphabet. Willow bark was one of the world's oldest sources of pain relief, salicylic acid, which the world still uses in the form of aspirin, thanks to the witches who never forgot their goddess-inspired remedy. Willows were sacred in Jerusalem, where the 6-day festival of the willow branch was annually celebrated with willow withes brought from a certain holy place known as Matzah. The willows were set up around the altar in the central temple. The weeping willow, which loves to grow on riverbanks, became a symbol of mourning because of biblical allusions to the Babylonian captivity. In a place where willows apparently were plentiful, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, we wept, when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. In England, where, well, that was from Psalm 137, 1-2. Anyways, in England, where no palm trees were available, willow branches were traditionally used for the palms of Palm Sunday. Not only because they were among the first to leaf in the spring, but also because they had been revered by pagan populations of the British Isles and country folk who still loved them. And then walnut trees used to be important to the pagan goddess, for the Middle Ages had many stories about walnut trees harboring devils, especially she-devils who whispered obscenities to passers-by. The Church of Santa Maria del Popolo in Rome was built on the spot where a scandalous walnut tree once stood, making indecent propositions to all who listened to the rustlings of its leaves. According to legend, Saint Barbatus had the tree cut down and the ground exorcised and reconsecrated for the construction of the church. Another offshoot of the pagan goddess, the apocryphal Saint Agatha, apocryphal, was said to have sailed across the Mediterranean Sea in a walnut shell. Walnuts were among the numerous tree fruits associated with female genitals. So the kind of common message or theme that I'm seeing here is kind of like this negative view of the feminine. So I really think that kind of was consistent with the reading I gave about having internalized this negative associated with being feminine and being a woman, and having to wear or mask this wound by taking on these really masculinized traits, and that there wants to be like a rebalancing of the personality here, so that these forces within the psyche can kind of take their more appropriate places and become more balanced and unified in a more righteous or integral way, rather than in this kind of trauma coping type of way, like doing this out of fear rather than out of mutual respect for one another. And yeah, so there might just be like a leaving behind of some really old, deeply ingrained patterns that came about from deep psychological wounding. I can really relate to that a lot. So yeah, it can be really helpful to heal these wounds by finding a transpersonal mother or father to really relate to, and that can take this form of the wise old man or woman. So I'd like to wrap up with an affirmation card for pile number 3, please. Interesting. I do whatever it takes to get closer to consciousness. And then there's an owl being depicted. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, we're talking about that higher consciousness. Okay, so now that we've kind of wrapped up the reading, taking the dream that you brought to this reading, you can do this visualization exercise to kind of connect to the sage archetype, and then an interpretation prompt will help you work with your dream. So visualization: whom do you consider to be wise? See this person in your mind's eye. Now imagine that you are the person you see, inhabiting his or her body, thoughts, and feelings. What are your priorities in life? How have you demonstrated your values and beliefs? What goals have you set yourself? If you could give one piece of advice to youth, what would it be? And then the interpretation prompts are: if an elderly or unusually knowledgeable person appeared in your dream, what special powers did he or she possess, if any? What areas of your life would this person be best able to advise you on? Was the person's knowledge learned or instinctive? How did you achieve a greater understanding with their help? Pile number 3, that is your reading. That's all I'm really getting for now. And I really appreciate you being here and allowing me to work with your energies and the dream contents that came through in this reading. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and if you have any feedback for me, I really enjoy hearing about how people connect to these readings. So I would really appreciate if you leave comments as well. Hi, pile number 3. So unfortunately my audio cut out at this point, but I wanted to do a voiceover anyways to recommend a couple books to you. They're going to be in the video description. They are The Wounded Woman, Healing the Father-Daughter Relationship, and another set of books is He and She by Robert Johnson. And if you're a woman, you might prefer to read she, and if you're a man, you might prefer to read he, but you can honestly read both of them and get a lot out of them. They're very helpful. They're written in the context of romantic relationships, but they're really helpful for understanding the dynamics that I was going on about anima and animus, and how that plays out in the psyche and how it plays out in our relationships. Yeah, and so again, thank you for coming to my channel. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.